15 years into it, I am still amazed at the issues that I run into and the time that it takes to do it right. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Midweek Modern Craftsman. It has been a while since I've sat down in my studio and recorded a podcast. I had a busy few weeks with vacation, birthdays, kids starting school, wrapping up a project, and life has gotten away from me, but I'm back. I'm strapped in. I'm ready to go, and I'm excited to record some more midweeks for you guys and girls. Today, I wanted to flip the script a bit and answer some questions that I get asked the most, not just about business, but about life, balance, mistakes, what keeps me going in the construction industry. These are the kind of questions that people ask me off mic, in person, and I think that they're worth sharing on this platform here as well. So let's dive into a handful of honest questions about what it really looks like for me as a builder, a business owner, and a dad trying to figure it all out. So the first couple of questions are personal questions, relatable questions. Number one, what does a typical day actually look like for you, and how different is it from what people probably imagine? My days start at home. Selby is now in 7th grade, so she's getting up around 6 a.m. to get on the bus before 7 a.m. So we are typically up early. Rachel is up before me. She's a very early riser. She likes to get her stuff done and go to sleep a little bit earlier than me. But recently, I've been doing my best to use my mornings to get a jump start on the day. I'm not as often rushing out of the house to get to the job by 8 anymore. There's times where I am when a job needs to get done because of a deadline, when I have a lot of things going on. But I've switched, and I've been trying to stay home until I can get Tilly on the bus in the morning. Her bus picks her up at 8:30. At least for another 2 years. So at that point, I get her on the bus, and then I'm on my way. Whatever I have to do. If it's working from home, obviously I come in, I get in the office, and I get some paperwork done, emails, all that stuff. If it's getting to the job, at that point, I leave and I get to the job around 9 o'clock, and that's just the way it is. It doesn't happen all the time, but that's something that I adopted post-COVID, and more so since I've been focusing more on the podcast platform. I realized that if I can take the extra hour in the morning, I can spend time with my family. I can engage with my kids. It's when my kids are best behaved, when they are most engaging, when they're not just fried socially and emotionally and physically from the day. They're not tired. They're not hungry. They're not fighting with each other, fighting with us. So the mornings are some of the best time that I've realized with the kids and with the family. So that just happened somewhat by accident. I started spending more time at home when I focused more on the social end of things and more on the podcast platform. And I realized that it's just really quality time that I have at most 10, 15 years that I can spend in this stage of my life. And it's really valuable time to me. So I've switched my business format that I'm going to get stuff done at home. I'm going to get emails done, paperwork done, correspondence done, plan my day. So if I get to the job an hour later, I can still be efficient as possible and get as much done. So at that point, if I'm home, I'm generally getting stuff done in the office, paperwork, until I can't sit still anymore. And then I'll go out and I'll do whatever I have to, hands-on, whether it's at our property, if it's in my shop, if it's running errands to set up for the job the next day. I get burnt pretty quickly being in the office and sitting at the computer and doing paperwork, so I can really only sit still for so long. So I'll spend as much time as I can, and then I'll be on my way to either out of the house, again, setting up for the job the next day. If I'm on the job, it's leaving at 8:30, getting to the job by 9, picking up the tool belt, getting to work. Being that I'm starting my day an hour later than normal, I ensure I have everything that I need for the job so that I am not running out during the day. And at that point, I'll stay till 4 or 5 o'clock, whatever time I have to. I pretty much work through lunch. I don't really take many breaks. I'm not a huge person who eats during the day. So my days are pretty jam-packed when I'm on the job, and I'm working my way right until it's time to head home. Come home, Rachel works full time, so we typically don't have too much time to get the kids ready for sports, events, school events, Girl Scouts, Selby's playing club volleyball, club softball. So I don't have a ton of time for all of that stuff. My wife doesn't either. So it's usually absolute chaos from after work, 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, whatever it is, until 10 o'clock when the kids are finally cleaned up and in bed. And then we start it all over again. So that's my typical day. Question 2, what's one mistake you made early on and you're actually glad it happened because it shaped the way that you build today? I think I would have to attribute this to the way that I do costing and budgeting now. Full transparent budgeting, fully transparent invoicing and costing, tracking my costs throughout the job. For a long time, I had jobs. I was initially differentiating myself by doing high level work, really prioritizing site cleanliness, attention to detail, communication, correspondence, experience, but I wasn't capturing my rate for that. And it took a really long time to realize that it wasn't even my rate as much as employees' rates. And the thing that was burning me most was that I wasn't able to capture the rate or invoice bill for the amount of time that my employees were putting into jobs. They were working more than I had budgeted for whatever reasons. Maybe it was budgeting that wasn't correct. Maybe it was mismanagement. Maybe it was just looking to be competitive. There's a number of reasons. Sometimes just shit happens. And my employees were costing me a lot of money than I had budget for. So it wasn't as though, yeah, I just need to work extra hours. I need to make it up. I need to hustle through this personally myself. My jobs didn't have the budget to be able to keep these employees on and pay them. So not only was I not getting paid, but I was actually paying for these renovations. So that was a really hard lesson to learn. But that's when I switched to T&M. That's when I switched to fully transparent budgeting, fully transparent invoicing, managing a job, day to day, task to task, hour by hour, cost by cost, so that everything is tracked, everything is accounted for. And that's how I'm invoicing my clients now. And the biggest difference, yeah, there's times where I work 12 hours and I only charge for 8. I'm not as concerned with losing those hours in a job because they're not necessarily costing me money. There's opportunity costs, there's potential financial loss, but I'm not putting out money to resolve that issue as much as when I have people working for me, getting them paid appropriately. So if I have an employee who works 1,000 hours on a project and I only budgeted 750, that job is costing me 250 hours worth of labor. So it's not as though I can do anything to make up with that with sweat equity. It's literally costing me money to execute that renovation or that remodel. So when I switched to T&M, when I switched to fully transparent costing, budgeting, invoicing every 2 weeks, I was able to manage that job better, ensure that we are remaining on budget. And if we were going over budget, I understood why. And I was able to go to my clients and address why we were over, how much we were over by, and what type of options we had moving forward. So that's one of the biggest mistakes that I made. I was using differentiation and my value proposition and my attention to detail and craftsmanship and quality to sell projects to get my foot in the door, but I wasn't using it to capture the rates and the money that I needed to. And it wasn't until I switched my model, my business model, and moved away from lump sum and started tracking and invoicing bi-weekly and fully transparent and basically reimbursements for jobs that are being put in place, and was fully disclosed all of my numbers, that I was able to capture those rates and build that trust with my clients and stop losing money and bleeding on every project. Question 3, these are more business and leadership type of questions. How do you decide which jobs to take on and which ones to walk away from? This has changed. Initially, most of this, when I first started out, it wasn't. It was just getting my foot in the door and doing anything that I could and building my network, building my experience, building my tool arsenal. But as I progressed, I really think that I was chasing ego and projects that looked great, that would be able to be documented, that would wow people. And I think that was a bit of a wolf cloaked in sheep's clothing because it was really fulfilling and it was really rewarding. But I think at the end of the day, I wasn't making the money that I needed to. And I believe it was my ego that was driving me to continue down that road and chase those projects and to compete and to elevate myself. And it wasn't really for the right reason. So as I've matured, as I've become more business savvy, as I've become more financially savvy, I've realized that there's aspects of my business that control and dictate how I make money. And there's very specific clients and very specific jobs that are required for me to be successful. And some of those jobs align with the previous model and previous ideal client and ideal project that I was chasing before, as far as attention to detail, cleanliness, typically having a very discerning and picky and sometimes pain in the ass type of client. Those are all similar. Those are remain aligned. But there's also clients now that I seek out that really trust me. And I think that that's the biggest difference for me now, is that I'm not selling to clients and convincing them to trust me. I'm finding the clients that want to trust me from the outset. Which jobs I take and which jobs I walk away from, I understand what makes me profitable as a business. I understand what thresholds for budget, what thresholds for neighborhoods, type of projects, client base are needed for me to be able to meet the financial needs and capacity and program of my business. And so that dictates what type of jobs I take. And typically that just begins through the vetting process from the first time a client reaches out to me, as far as what they want done, where they live, what their budget is, if they have a design in place, if they're interested in bringing design into the conversation, if they are good with time and material contracts, if they are good with managing things bi-weekly, if they understand that I don't turn jobs around quickly. There's all of these things that make me successful as a contractor and things that make me not unsuccessful, but just aren't my strengths. They're weaknesses of me and my business. So when clients reach out, I have a list of questions that I can use to vet those clients and vet those projects and ensure that they're a good fit for me, not only doing the work that's fulfilling to me, but doing the work that financially makes sense to me. There's projects that I say no to, which are amazing projects. They check all the boxes, except maybe they want the job done too quickly. Maybe they want it completed in a 3-month window and I know it's going to take 4. Maybe they're not good with T&M contracts and they want fixed cost. Maybe they're not good with my markups. So I have to understand, dig my heels in, and ensure that I'm only saying yes to the projects that make me money, because I don't do $2 million worth of work in a year. I don't do $10 million worth of work in a year. There's times I don't do $1 million worth of work in a year. So I need to ensure that my margins are up around 40%, ideally in a perfect world higher than that, for me to be able to make money based on the low volume of work that I do. And there's certain characteristics of those jobs, and it's pretty straightforward once you understand it and that I understand it, to know which jobs are a fit and which jobs are not a fit, which clients are a fit and which clients are not a fit. And that's how I decide which to take and which to walk away from. And it sets myself up for the greatest opportunity for success. Number 4, what's something about running a business in the trades that nobody prepared you for? Everything. I feel I was fully unprepared to go into business. I feel I was fully naive to think this was the convenient and easier route, the less stressful route. I didn't understand business. I didn't understand how to sell work outside of being competitive financially or from a price, or being more of a commodity-based contractor. I didn't understand that my low volume required different things from me and my business. But if there were one thing about running a business in the trades that nobody prepared me for, I think I would have to say, in order to do things correct and right, just how difficult it is. and how no single day will ever go according to plan. And I'm still shocked by that. 15 years into it, when I set up on a job and I have everything accounted for and I have everything set up and I'm good to go, I am still amazed at the issues that I run into, the hiccups that I experience, and the time that it takes to do it right. Generally speaking, when somebody runs into these issues, there's a very easy way to resolve them to move forward. The right way is typically not the easy way, and I wish that I was more aware of that. I wish that I understood my value when it comes to that. I still experience that day to day. I still show up on jobs. I still look at jobs. I still budget for jobs and grossly underestimate the amount of time that it's going to take because of unforeseens, because I want to please somebody. So that would be the biggest thing that I think I was not fully prepared for, and I still don't fully have my head wrapped around when it comes to day-to-day business, is basically just how long everything's going to take, how many unforeseens, how many unexpecteds there are, understanding how to account for them and how to charge for them. That would be probably the biggest thing. And I say that again because I don't think that I've figured that out. I don't think that I have that licked. I don't think that there's a percentage or a markup that you can put on a job to accurately gauge or quantify what that's going to be. Every day is different. Every hiccup, every struggle is different. It can be as simple as I went to repair a couple of deck boards on my deck at my house. They're nothing fancy. They're from the people we bought from before, and it was 3 pressure treated deck boards that I went to replace. I ripped the old ones out. I went to put the new ones in, and my nail gun was jamming up and wasn't working. So I had to take the nail gun apart. I had to grease things. I had to get the plunger back in. I finally got everything unjammed. I got it operating correctly. And then all of a sudden, my compressor and the PSI that it trips on and off kept blowing the pressure release valve. So then I had to stop, and I had to pull the cover off my compressor, and I had to pull up the manual because I forgot how to adjust the engagement points of when the compressor kicks on and charges and when it trips to be recharged. And I had to dial them back in. I went to go clean up and realized that there was an additional deck board that I didn't notice was broken until later. So something that should have taken a matter of 20 minutes ended up taking an hour and a half. And there's really no way for me to have known that I would have found an additional board that was rotted, that my compressor all of a sudden, after working for years, needed adjustment, and that my nail gun was going to jam up. And it was nothing but headache, and it was nothing but frustration. In the grand scheme of things, it was only an hour and 10 minutes. But when you extrapolate that across an entire project, it can be extreme. It can be extreme from what it cost you. Even more so, it can just be mentally draining and mentally fatiguing. And I can recall that day just being frustrated and thinking to myself, there's not a single day in this industry, in this trade, that goes according to plan. Nothing is ever simple. Nothing is as anticipated. Nothing is easy. It's always a struggle. And at times it's really difficult to maintain a positive outlook, a positive attitude, and continue to progress and move forward and put your best foot forward and do the best work that you can without becoming bitter, without becoming stressed, without becoming angry at the situation. And I have found that the way that I operate now, being T&M and at least getting paid for that time, those extras, those things that are not accounted for and aren't necessarily egregious mistakes, errors, or omissions, but just things that, right, you shouldn't account on your equipment working 100% of the time when you're on a job. You need to factor in for that. You need to be able to charge for that. And that's just life. And there's nothing wrong with my nail gun. There's nothing wrong with my compressor. But that day was just having issues. And while it may not seem fair that the client is to pay for that, at the end of the day, you wouldn't have that nail gun out. You wouldn't have that compressor out if it weren't for this project. And that needs to be built into your cost. And that's something that I still struggle with today, and I don't do it, and just maintaining that positive outlook and attitude. So question number 5, these are more culture and mindset type of questions, relatively appropriate and feeding off of the last question. When the work gets repetitive or stressful, what keeps you motivated to stay in the game? Deadlines, obviously, maintaining budget, doing right by my clients. I just had a project that I did for a buddy of mine that I promised something that was almost impossible once we pulled it apart, and what we ran into and what we experienced became really tight from a time crunch perspective. I was going away on vacation. They were having an engagement party at their house, and I just ran into a ton of issues. And we added scope, and it was more complicated than anticipated with the existing structure. And it just took way longer than anticipated. But what kept me motivated was I wanted to preserve my relationship with my friend. I wanted to uphold my end of the bargain. I wanted to meet my deadline, and I wanted to do right by them. Those all motivated me. When things are stressful, my wife does a good job of motivating me and keeping my head in the game and telling me, you're so close, 1 more day, 2 more days, 1 more week, whatever it is, you're in the clear, you're close to being in the clear. But so much of it is pride, it's integrity, it's honor, it's dignity, it's upholding my end of the bargain is what's always in the back of my head. And it's not, hey, I need to get out of here. I need to just speed up or get this done. I still want to do a good job, and I still want to maintain my word and that integrity and that honor. So that's something that really keeps me motivated. When it becomes repetitive, I just had this conversation the other day while working on this project that we were at the point where we're putting up deck rails, and it's just the same thing over and over, and screwing balusters into the top and bottom rails. And the guy I was working with was saying that he enjoyed that aspect of the job, and I was saying how I hated that aspect of the job, because once it becomes repetitive, once I have it figured out, I'm just bored. It's going through the motions. So what you have to do is you have to figure ways of being more efficient. You have to focus on something else. You have to focus on how you can get this done as quickly as possible, and how you can challenge yourself to create these efficiencies and these productivities, and that's where your energy goes. Rather than, hey, I'm doing the same mundane task over and over again, you're focusing on building systems and efficiencies to get it done faster, and then that's what ends up motivating you. I did this one 20 seconds faster than the last. I did this a minute faster than the last. Now we're getting these entire rail assemblies done in 45 minutes rather than 60 minutes. So that's typically what I focus on when things become monotonous. What do you think younger people entering the trades today value differently than you did starting out? This generation, and I'm not that far removed from it, I'm 39, but speaking to people who are 10 years younger than me or even younger, life costs more for them than it did for us at that age. And while it's comparable, and the distinction between my generation and the generation after me is much closer than I feel even my generation and my parents' generation, the mentality there is completely different, because the cost of living and life based on the cost, the median salary was so much closer. The distinction between the two now is much larger. It's so much more polarizing, what we can make versus what life costs us now versus our parents' generation. And even from being 39 to somebody who's 29, it's still, there's a gap there, right? Because we got in and we bought houses when housing prices weren't as inflated, when interest rates weren't as inflated. So although, yeah, we still have a lot of the same expenses, life, even for somebody 10 years younger than myself, is less expensive when you relate the cost of living versus what they're being paid. So I think that the younger generation, when I've dealt with them, I have this mentality of, you want to make how much money? I didn't make that until I was 10 years into owning my own business. A lot of times I don't feel that it's justified. And I understand why they want that. But when I look at it in my perspective, I'm only 10 years older than you, and I was 10 years into owning my own business, and that's what you want to make on an hourly basis. It's really tough for me, because there's still a cap on what we can pay people within our industry. There's not many jobs There's not many careers within this industry in residential, being a small scale contractor, where I can pay somebody $75 an hour to come work for me and still make my rate, unless I had many, many jobs going on. And still, that would be tough. You're selling a model that's based on a very niche type of market, and there's not a huge high demand for that. So I think that you are limited to the amount of work and the volume of work that you can sell. So that's something that I think younger people, there's a big disconnect in what they value. They value lifestyle, they value their free time, they value a higher pay rate, they value time off, and within our industry, it hasn't come around to support that holistically yet. It's just not there. If you go into commercial, yeah. If you go into a bigger company, yeah. But when you go to work for an owner operator, you go to work for somebody who's still wearing the tool belt, who only has a couple of guys, there's a lot of things that the younger generation wants, that it's not that we don't want that for them. It's just that our customers and our clients and what everyone else is doing can't and don't bear or justify that. So it winds up being really tough. And I think that the mentality, as bad as it is one of my own, where, right, somebody wants to make $50 an hour and they're essentially a helper. They're another set of hands on a job. And I think to myself, I wasn't 5 years into business until I could charge $50 an hour. And still most people told me no. And I had all the overhead of my business and everything else. How can I justify that? Where's the ceiling there? So I think that that's the biggest hurdle and the biggest struggle for me, and the difference between the younger generation and even somebody like myself who's 10 years older. And I think that the disparity between my generation and my parents' generation is even bigger, just based on the cost of living and realistically what you can make and what things cost these days. It was much more in proportion for my parents' generation than for mine. I just had this conversation with another buddy of mine that his dad raised 5 kids. They took vacations. They went to private school on a $110,000 salary, and his wife didn't work. Obviously, I don't need to tell you how impossible that would be these days. You would struggle. You would struggle to survive. You would struggle. You'd really have to limit what you did. And I think it would be a very difficult lifestyle to raise a family of 5 and provide for them based on the cost of living today on $110,000. I couldn't do it with one child. I probably couldn't do it with just myself, to be honest. I definitely couldn't do it with one child. I think if I was single, I would struggle to be able to survive on $110,000 and have any sort of lifestyle that met my needs. Question number 7. This is the last question. How has becoming a dad changed the way you think about your work, your clients, or the homes you're building? I have just prioritized different things in the past few years, and it's more than just lip service. When I had kids, I put a lot of stress and a lot of pressure on myself, and I created a ton of anxiety to support my kids. And the way that I coped and managed that anxiety was just working more, but it wasn't working smarter. I just worked harder. I just grinded, and it almost led to complete and utter failure for me. And having kids, I've realized just how limited our time is, just how fast life passes by, and that there's more important things than me working more hours in a day. I put less value, less emotional value on my work. I still have a ton of pride. I still have a ton of integrity in the work that I do, but I have less emotional stake in those jobs. I'm not going to allow my happiness to be dictated by my client's happiness or my projects. And that doesn't mean that I don't care. There's more important things in my life now. And not that those things weren't in my life. I just have a better understanding of that. I focus more on other things. If I go on vacation, I don't worry about what I left behind. I don't worry about if I couldn't please one client. If one thing happened on the job, I've learned to move on better. I've learned to understand what's really important in life, and that's come with maturation, that's come with age, and that's come with making a lot of mistakes and experience. I also understand the importance of what I'm selling to clients. A lot of my clients are performing live-in remodels. They don't have the means, they don't have the opportunity to move out. And I think about how I would want to be treated, if I hired somebody, when I do hire somebody, when I have them come into my house, when I have them work my car, what I want that experience to look like. And I use that as the foundation for creating my product, my service. If I didn't do this and I had to bring somebody into my house, I would want to be able to trust them. I would want the communication to be there. I would want to be able to live in the house and that experience to be as uninterrupted, as safe, and as healthy as possible. And I base a lot of my model and my value proposition on those things because I understand how important that is to me as a family and being able to trust the people that I work with and the people that I have in my life. And I want to be able to provide that service for my clients. So my kids and becoming a father has affected my business in more ways than I'll ever be able to count. Obviously, it's created a way for me to better understand the value of my time and opportunity cost and what's important, and that I don't need to leave the house at 7 o'clock in the morning to feel fulfilled and to be able to get a decent day's work in. And also that it's more important for me to leave work to make it to my daughter's softball games or volleyball games or school event than it is to stay on the job and work my way through it and miss all of those things. And there's still times when I do that, but I give myself more grace now. So those are the 7 questions, basically what people ask me a lot of the times on consulting calls, on offline conversations via email about how I handle my business, how I handle my life. Those are some of the most common questions that I wanted to dig into and that I hear over and over again. I hope that that was helpful for you. I also am still doing consulting calls if you're interested. I put them on hold for a little bit while I was on vacation, leading up to vacation. I'm sure all of you understand how chaotic that can be. But if you're struggling with your business, if you're struggling with work-life balance, if you're struggling with your numbers, if you're a belt-on contractor and you're just struggling to make money, you don't know how to do it, you don't know how to market yourself, you don't know how to charge your time, you don't know how to sell a different type of product to a different client, or how to locate that client, or try and figure out the client that makes the most sense for you, the job that makes you money, and you want to pick my brain, or you want me to look into your numbers, you want to send me your P&L, whatever it is, shoot me an email, tyler@trghomeconcepts.com. I offer 1-hour consulting. A lot of times I do it through StreamYard, so we can have a one-on-one. We can record the conversation, and then I can follow up with a summary of the conversation as well as a handful of deliverables for you to do on your own, to do before we book another call if that's what you want. So there's a ton of value there. There's a ton that I can help you with. If you're interested, shoot me that email, tyler@trghomeconcepts.com. And as always, I appreciate all of you hanging around, appreciate your patience while I got my shit together and took vacation and got the kids back in school, along with my wife, obviously, and just got back into the swing of things because end of summer is chaotic, end of summer is crazy. Been dealt with a lot personally this summer with the family. And it took me a little bit to get back on track and get back in the groove. So I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I will catch you guys next week. As always, thank you so much. Keep the questions coming. I'll talk to you all soon. Thanks.